By June of 2022, with about 6 months to the general election, current developments in the Independent National Electoral Commission may leave Nigeria with a huge gap in experience needed among those who will be conducting those elections. By then, a large chunk of the resident electoral commissioners in the commission, about 80% of them, will be due for retirement from service. These are officers nominated into that capacity in March 2007 by President Muhammadu Buhari. Political analysts say are calling for expedited action on the issue of appointment of personnel if this situation must be averted. On this program, we have dealt with the matter of non-partisanship by such electoral officers as stipulated by the relevant guidelines. For this, we'll be talking to Professor Yemi Oke of the Department of International Law and Jurisprudence, Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. He'll also be looking at the growing call for the President to consider deploying the resources and experience of current INEC officers to guide and orientate incoming appointments. The basis of this argument being that some of the officers in question have successful elections in the course of their service. What are the merits and demerits of this argument? For further analysis on this, we're joined by the professor. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Professor Oke, good morning. Salute. Anyway, quickly. Yesterday, the Senate... Yes.
I said saluted to you.
Yes, morning. Well, yesterday, the Senate confirmed the nomination of Professor Mahmood Yakubu of INEC for a second term in office. And the position of the Senate was that there was no protest, no objection to his reappointment, and they had a lot to say about his achievements. Do you think that the renomination and confirmation for a second term is deserved, or the president should have allowed a new broom to take over INEC to be able to correct some of the omissions observed in the last elections conducted by INEC under Professor Mahmood Yakubu's watch?
Thank you very much for that question. Well, as a teacher, if I would rate the performance of Professor Mahmood Yakubu, also a colleague in the academia, I'll give him 35%. And that's a failure, clearly F. We need to clearly look at the elections conducted or midwife by during his leadership. Had unprecedented number of inconclusions. We've had several cases of electoral fraud. And quite a number of those elections were upturned by the court. We've had extensive levels of pre- and post-election litigation. And of course, as somebody who was active both on the legal side, we realized a lot of cases filed against INEC were defended. So INEC also ought to have properly scrutinized counsel handling some of those cases for them. And as much as INEC might want to stay neutral in court, we felt the needful ought to have been done, at least to salvage the situation. What happens in practice is once cases are filed against an election conducted by INEC, INEC plays the neutral card, appropriate, and diplomatically aligns with the candidate declared by INEC, of course, to justify the outcome of the election. And things happen. But let's go to the performance of Professor Mahmood Yakubu. You and I know, and this is not being diplomatic, his tenure has been somewhat acrimonious, judging by the outcome of those elections, not in terms of violence, because we can't attribute those to INEC. We're talking of disputed outcomes of those elections. I don't want to start mentioning cases. Maybe I can mention Ekiti, maybe I can mention Osun, maybe I can mention, endless. I can mention Imo, I can go on and go on. Senatorial elections. I wouldn't call him well. And I wouldn't think somebody who hasn't done well satisfactorily should be rewarded with another tenure. We can't continue to experiment with that kind of leadership is provided. Of course, because we have credible hands in INEC, that's why I'm worried with the succession strategy of INEC as an institution. But concluding on the question of Professor Mahmood Yakubu, he hasn't deserved the second term. He doesn't. He hasn't done very well. He's performed, to the best of my assessment, I might be wrong, way below average. And I'm not convinced that lessons are learned, particularly by his style of leadership. So Nigerians would have been happier having a neutral person or somebody from the ranks of existing commissioners who have been proven and tested.
Thank you, Prof. What do you say to the argument that you're completely right in what you said? Local and international observers have been less than impressed with the conduct of some of our elections. But there's an argument that the Edo and Ondo elections, the two most recent gubernatorial elections, were more successful, and that Professor Mahmood is hitting his stride. Do you feel that that justifies the second term?
Okay, I don't think it would be right to now compensate Professor Mahmood Yakubu with another crucial tenure extension by below average performance in Edo and Ondo states. I'm not convinced that election was that each free. It was just satisfactory because we are used to abysmal performances in Nigeria. Edo election will be like in the realm of 45 to 50. Ditto for Ondo. And that doesn't mean the election was 100% credible because they passed. And they're already documenting the infractions. They already certified those infractions, alterations, even with the collision of some INEC ad hoc staff or regular staff. The two elections, both Edo and Ondo, they are now at the election tribunals. And those elections were not even excellent elections. They were barely below, above average. That would not be sufficient to now Professor Mahmood Yakubu with tenure elongation or extension. But most crucial elections conducted under his word, under his leadership, were flawed, dangerously flawed. And we are approaching another crucial election year in 2020, 2023. We've seen the build-ups already to even smuggle a person into INEC questions, really. Mahmood has been a very firm man. If you compare him with Professor Jega, quite different. Yeah. It shouldn't have been reappointed, but I guess it's too late now. So now, I and challenge to justify the questionable tenure extension given to him. Doubting Thomases like myself, if you begin to see very credible elections, both in terms of planning, logistic deployment, partial conduct of elections, and post-election issues like court tribunals, when INEC officials will come to court, to those documents, those that have been doctored, those that are credible, honing up to those errors, so that we have structure. INEC should never be on the side of any politician, and the reverse, the contrary, is the experience we've seen.
Okay. Okay, Prof.
Regrettably.
Okay, Prof. I'll put in a couple of rebuttals, and we'll just talk through it, but we'll take a break in between when you're talking, probably if you don't finish answering the question. A lot of people will say, yeah, we'd like to know the criteria at which you score the marks, really. As a professor, I know the criteria at which you... And secondly, a lot of people will say, this same man brought him things like ZPAD, that helped with the process in Edo and Ondo, that helped with that process of integrity, that once the results in the units were put up online, you could hardly change anything. And secondly, a lot of people would also want to know your take as regards, the institution of our electoral body as a career body, because in our premise, we talked about those commissioners that will be retired very soon, and how we can have people grow through the ranks in INEC rather than bringing partisan people like you've talked about in the case of Loretta on the chair. If we're due for a break, we'll take a quick break now. Prof, maybe you just probably come back and answer these questions or these points I've raised. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. All right, let's go straight to it. So, Prof, I asked a couple of questions. I said a lot of people will, give a rebuttal. They would like to know how you score your points, because you score them really very low for the elections. Secondly, some other people argue and say, okay, this same man, Professor Yakubu Mahmood, brought in ZPAD, that a lot of people, said made the process really very transparent, and that was a technological innovation. He even says for the next Alhambra election to come, another off-cycle election, they're going to bring a lot of technological innovation. And going one step further, the career of commissioners in INEC is another question a lot of people are talking about, that when are people going to go through the ranks, and they can develop into commissioners and the likes and in INEC, rather than this selection or this recommendations or nominations, as it is the case, a lot of people have been talking about now about Loretta on the chair, that she's quite very partisan. Why should she even make the cut or even be considered for INEC, a very independent, as the name implies, independent organization? What's your take on all this myriad of issues?
Thank you very much. Let me start from the ranking or the rating or the scoring of Professor Mahmood Yakubu. I take it subject by subject. I assume we've conducted a number of elections, and I want to assume we've had 20 elections. We've had well over that. We've had more than that, but for purpose of argument, I say if we've had 20 elections in a row, 18 discredited, just 2 slightly above average, then I'm just to score the sheet. That cannot be an impressive result. That's a fair result. So if you have 2 out of 18 failures, 2 barely pass, that cannot be a good result. That doesn't mean you will not be given another opportunity. Of course, I would take his reappointment as an opportunity for him to repeat that class with a view to ascertaining his capacity to improve on areas where he had failed. He hasn't done well as to the first time. Now he's had another opportunity a golden one to improve on his records. Let's see what it does. That. Going back to speculative Anambra election, I'm amazed, really, that we're just trying to test the waters with some of these elections. Nigerians have been clamoring for electronic voting, electronic recording, card reader. Card reader should have transmitted automatically to the server. You all remember the back-end server in the presidential election that became an issue even in court. But they are not just activating the back-end servers to the extent that once you are created with your card reader and you cast your vote, the result gets transmitted. So they are getting the e-platform for a purpose of election, and we are not there yet. So then must we, at all times, look for external persons, those who have never had anything to do with INEC or election or electoral processes in the country? You bring a professor from the classroom and you make him INEC chairman to experiment and start to learn the ropes with the conduct of very sensitive national elections. That's wrong. INEC should now be institutionalized. If you've not been tested with the conducting of, let's say, state or local government elections, House of governorship, senatorial, it will be almost suicidal to pick you from the classroom or from another sister agency of government and make you INEC chairman. People should have a career path in INEC, and that is what we are saying now. For crying out loud, we've had tested, proven, credible professionals who have been appointed as INEC commissioners, and they've served for a minimum of a decade. You mainstream them to the national structure as national commissioners. The most senior or the most credible, or based on rotational arrangement of federal character, one of them becomes the chairman. And those will be persons who are proven and tested as to election and electoral processes. As against choosing INEC chairmanship as a form of compensation for kind of loyalty to somebody, that has to change. And Onoche's case has really manifested the challenges, the grave danger slipping into as a nation. How, of course, some of us have noticed gradual but increasingly dangerous trends of recruiting active political loyalists to INEC as commissioners, our national commissioners. That's a very dangerous trend. The case of Onoche and several others that were not challenged.
Well,
there's the worrisome trend that Nigerians are monitoring.
Hello, Professor Oke, are you still there? Hello, Prof?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. You know, I was waiting for you to conclude your thoughts. Yes. I was waiting for you to conclude your thoughts on Onoche, because I heard you saying on Onoche.
I said the attempt of politics to bring Onoche on board has really exposed the trend of dangerous politicization of INEC. And if those trends are not curtailed, could snowball into a major disaster for Nigeria as a country.
Well, thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us on the morning show.